On the western coast of an island smaller than the Netherlands sits a cluster of low gray buildings ringed by fences, cameras, and its own private fire brigade. There are no tour. The people who work inside sign agreements that follow them for years. And yet the silicon stamped out behind those walls ends up inside the phone in your pocket, the car in your driveway, and the server answering this very request. This is the most consequential factory you have never been allowed to see. The company is Taiwan's Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, known almost everywhere simply by its initials. It is something deceptively simple to describe. It does not design chips. It does not sell phones. It only manufactures the chips that other companies design, and it does so better than anyone else alive. Roughly 9 out of every 10 of the world's most advanced processors are born here, on this stretch of coastline, in a handful of buildings. To understand why this matters, picture what a modern chip actually is. On a sliver of silicon barely the size of a fingernail, engineers pack tens of billions of switches. The smallest features are now only a few nanometers across, so small that 1,000 of them lined up would still be thinner than a strand of human hair. Building something at that scale is less like assembly and more like printing a city, layer by layer, atom by atom. The rooms where this happens are cleaner than an operating theater. A single speck of dust, invisible to your eye, can ruin a chip worth thousands of dollars. So the air is filtered hundreds of times an hour. Workers wear full coveralls and hoods that cover everything but the eyes, and even the lighting is tuned yellow so it will not expose the light-sensitive layers being printed. People who have stood inside describe it as the quietest, most disciplined workplace they have ever entered. At the heart of the process is a machine that almost nobody outside the industry has heard of. To carve features this small, the factory uses light with a wavelength of just over 13 nanometers, called extreme ultraviolet. Generating it is absurd. Inside the machine, droplets of molten tin are fired through a vacuum and struck twice by a laser, vaporizing into a plasma that glows in exactly the right invisible color. That light bounces off mirrors so smooth that, if one were scaled to the size of the country, its largest bump would be less than a millimeter tall. Here is the first hidden choke point. Those machines are made by exactly one company on Earth, a Dutch firm, and each one costs upwards of $150 million. They are so complex they are shipped in pieces across dozens of cargo planes and assembled on site over months. No nation, no matter how wealthy, can simply build its own from scratch. And the company that buys the most of them, year after year, is the one on this Taiwanese coast. But owning the machine is only the beginning. The hard part, the part that cannot be bought, is knowing how to run it. Turning a polished silicon wafer into billions of working transistors takes more than 1,000 individual steps, each one a recipe refined over decades by engineers who never publish what they know. 2 factories can own identical equipment and still produce wildly different results. The difference is institutional memory, and it lives only in the heads and habits of the people who work there. Consider what happened during the global chip shortage that began around 2020. Car makers, who had canceled their orders expecting a downturn, suddenly found there were no slots left to make their chips. Brand new vehicles sat in fields, finished except for a few dollars of missing silicon. Factories that built everything else perfectly could not ship a single car. It was a quiet, brutal demonstration of how much of the modern economy hangs on a supply that one cluster of fabs largely controls. This is why the chips made here have a nickname among strategists, the Silicon Shield. The theory is blunt. Because the entire world depends on this island's output, the world has a powerful incentive to keep it stable and intact. A factory becomes a form of national defense. But a shield can also be a target, and the same concentration that makes Taiwan indispensable also makes it the single most dangerous point of failure in the global economy. The danger is geographic. The island sits about 100 miles off the coast of mainland China, which considers it a breakaway province and has never ruled out taking it by force. The narrow strip of water between them is one of the most militarized stretches of sea on the planet. Were that fragile arrangement ever to break, the fabs would not need to be bombed to go dark. The supply of materials, the foreign engineers, the specialized gases shipped in weekly, any of it could be cut, and the world's most advanced chip production would simply stop. Governments understand this. which is why billions of dollars are now being poured into building copies of these factories elsewhere, in the deserts of Arizona, in Japan, in Germany. But concrete and equipment are the easy part. The new sites have struggled to find enough trained engineers to replicate the relentless culture, to match the yields. Early reports describe delays, cost overruns, and the slow realization that you cannot airlift decades of accumulated expertise. The factory abroad is real, but it is not yet the same factory. And the secrecy is not paranoia, it is strategy. The company's most advanced recipes are the closest thing the modern world has to a national treasure. Leak them, and a rival could close a gap that took 20 years and tens of billions of dollars to open. So access is controlled, knowledge is compartmentalized so no single person holds the whole picture, and the deepest processes are deliberately kept on the island. The secrecy is the moat. Without it, the advantage erodes. So the next time your phone wakes instantly, or your car parks itself, or a server answers a question in milliseconds, remember the chain hiding behind that moment. A Dutch machine firing molten tin. A wafer carried by robots through 1,000 secret steps. A workforce that cannot be cloned, on an island that 2 superpowers will not stop circling. The most powerful factory on Earth is not powerful because it is large. It is powerful because almost nothing modern can be built without it. And because, for now, no one else has figured out how to do what it does.
If you found this deep dive valuable, hit the like button, drop a comment below on what tech mystery we should decode next, and subscribe to never miss an episode.